Huh. No wonder this book is worth so much. That Buck Marshall sure is a heck of a hero. So memorable. Alrighty, Animaniacs. Welcome to a new episode of B-Movie Enema, the series. I'm glad to have you here. I'm Geoff Arbuckle, and with me as always is my partner in crime, Nurse Disembaudee. Nurse, how's it going?
It's going good, Geoff. I'm also super happy to have the audience here for this week's episode.
Well, fantastic. Also, please allow us to welcome the great B-Movie Poop Shoot. Poop Shoot, take a bow. I said take a bow, not take a shit. Nah, I'm just joshing you.
Here's the deal with our good buddy Poop Shoot. Geoff sits at the exit of the great B-Movie Poop Shoot, and that's how he gets the movies that he's written about on the blog or shown here on the show.
Well, that's right, Nurse.
I think we should find out what he has for us this week.
You know, that's a great idea. Hey, Poop Shoot, what you got for us this week? Alright, cool, let's check it out.
I hope it's a good one. We've had a lot of good ones this year so far.
Oh boy, this one's kind of an interesting one.
What is it? Now you've got me really curious.
This week's movie is 1976's, well, sort of 1976's, Track of the Moon Beast.
Ooh, sounds mysterious and kind of far out.
This is a movie that, for the better part of the last 40 years, has mostly garnered negative responses from both the audience and critics. And I'm not totally settled on whether or not it deserves every single negative review it's ever gotten.
But Geoff, is this a movie that you think I would like?
I actually do kind of think you will find the same charm in it that I do, and that's the key word here. I cannot escape the fact that I really do think this movie has a certain charm to it.
Oh, I want to hear about this.
You know, in the negative reviews, the movie is labeled as being bad, or that it fails in every possible way, or that the movie has a really bizarre ending, but oftentimes the reviewer finds something to say about it that's not really all that negative. Maybe it's the makeup of the monster that might catch an FX aficionado's fancy. Maybe it's the fact that some stuff does come off as kind of silly, but it's something of a good-natured chuckle you have at the expense of the movie. And all that means is that the movie has the ability to charm some people.
You know what, Geoff? Sometimes a bad movie can be just as nice to watch regardless.
You know, that's right, Nurse. This comes from an era in movies that often found people making very regionally specific movies.
What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean by that is that a movie is made in some places that you wouldn't think movies get made in. Movies made in the middle of nowhere of North Carolina, Georgia, Louisiana, and in the case of this movie, Albuquerque, New Mexico. These movies both feature very specific features of the area, be it a swamp or a mountainous region or whatever. It's very clearly someone local using local features to make the movie. But more than that, regional movies were often made on an extremely small budget and really mostly meant to be shown in regionally close drive-ins. And every now and then, a movie breaks out from that and gets national distribution, either by the right eyes getting on a movie to get it distributed, or it gets sold to TV. And I think Track of the Moon Beast is one of these movies.
So it played in drive-ins around New Mexico and the Southwest?
Well, no.
No?
Nope. This movie was actually made in 1972. There's a copyright on the film that you'll see that says as much. However, after the movie was made in the can, and they couldn't find a distributor to get the movie released to theaters and drive-ins. It wasn't until the summer of 1976 that the movie found distribution by way of appearing on television. This is a movie that, once upon a time, some 50 years ago, had a different cut of the movie intended for release. Originally, this was an R-rated horror movie with much more graphic monster stuff in it. However, because the movie never played in theaters, the only version of this movie that currently seemingly exists is the edited for television version.
So did it get a national television deal so people could see it? How did it get out to everyone? How did you find out about this movie?
You know, that's good of you to ask. I don't know if that 1976 TV deal was a national situation. It might have been more of a local deal to just get it on TV, and then it just eventually got passed around to other local stations until it became a little bit more known across several locations. In the early 2000s, it did get released to DVD in several different ways, sometimes as part of a low-cost compilation pack. And I think sometimes it was a release on a DVD by itself. But that's not how I know it best. In 1999, it was featured on Mystery Science Theater 3000. In fact, it's one of my favorite episodes of the entire series. There are jokes that I think about surprisingly often from that episode. There was a consecutive streak of episodes in that final season that are among my favorites. It started with The Bloodwaters of Dr. Z, also known as Zat, then Boggy Creek 2, then Track of the Moon Beast, and then it wrapped up that 4-episode run with Final Justice. And that's just a great run of episodes for the series as the show was nearing the end of its original run.
So, wait, I'm confused.
Well, how so?
You say everyone seems to hate the movie, but that it also has charm. But it's also a Mystery Science Theater 3000 movie. I'm confused about how I'm supposed to feel about the movie. Should I be excited to watch it or not?
Well, let's get to it and find out for ourselves, shall we?
Yes, I need to figure out if this movie is going to be good, or charming, or bad, or whatever.
Great. Well, we'll be back after the first segment of this movie and discuss the director, the cast, Stu, and California Ladies.
Stand by, camera one.
And this special report from KOB Television. The National Aeronautics and Space Agency quotes officials as saying that the asteroid now entering our portion of the solar system poses no threat to Earth. Meanwhile, NASA's viewpoint is substantiated by observatories as far away as Siberia and Peking. However, as might be expected, official sources in Moscow and Peking do have a difference of opinion as to the size and mass of the space intruder. Nevertheless, the world's scientific community is generally agreed on one thing. The asteroid is on a collision course with the moon. After the impact, astronomers will no doubt have to add a new crater to their maps of our already pockmarked moon. In any event, we will interrupt our regular programs to keep you informed of the now certain collision in outer space and to bring you any further bulletins from leading observatories or from NASA. Hi, Paul.
Johnny. Johnny Longbow.
Johnny, what? Sorry for rushing the Halloween season. It was too good to resist.
What?
You can come out now. Show's over.
Count Dracula at your service.
And better known on campus as Bud Keeler and Janet Price.
Hi, do forgive us.
These, I'm afraid, are two of my students at the university. Unfortunately, I'm saddled with them for my summer field course. Just as you were saddled with me. Not quite. You decided to switch from anthropology to mineralogy at the graduate level. Until that point, I thought you had a fair degree of sense.
Was it you that made that god-awful sound? That was me, I'm afraid.
He also does bird calls, but don't get him started.
Janet, like I keep telling you, an anthropology major these days should have more than one talent.
That's a talent? Bird calls? I'm Kathy Nolan.
Paul Carlson. Don't tell me you're a student.
Miss Nolan's doing a picture story on the religious customs of the tribes around here, especially my own people. That's why Bud happened to have a ceremonial mask.
Really my idea. I borrowed the mask from the collection at the reservation to do some mood shots on location out here.
But when we were heading back and I saw you, and Professor Salinas explained you were a friend, well, I'm afraid the bright idea of using it for a practical joke and getting some shots of your reaction was my idea.
Thanks, I'm glad to know.
I'm afraid we got more reaction than I bargained for. I won't use the shot. That's a promise. Am I forgiven?
Of course, Miss Nolan.
Kathy to my friends. We are friends.
We are, Kathy.
We were just on our way to Professor Salinas' place at the reservation. He's promised us an authentic Indian supper. Won't you join us?
I'd like to, if it's all right with Johnny Longbow.
It's all right with me, no problem at all. Just follow my car.
Why do you call him Johnny Longbow?
Well, it's his Indian name, his tribal one. It translates warrior's bow that reaches long to its mark. Actually, he handles a bow like one of his ancestors.
There's additional word from NASA this evening concerning the asteroid that collided with the moon 2 days ago. Radio telemetry from the seismometers planted on the moon's surface in previous Apollo missions have recorded the shock of the impact as beyond the end of the Richter scale. On Earth, this would be a disturbance that would rival the explosion in the 19th century of the volcanic island of Krakatoa. The impact on the moon has sent off a shower of fragments mixed with pieces of the asteroid. Some of these small fragments will enter Earth's atmosphere tonight, but they will undoubtedly explode into nothing more than a harmless shower of tiny meteorites, according to NASA officials. The greatest concentration of this meteor shower will be over the southwest region of the United States. This meteor shower will be, however, quite harmless, according to the statement from NASA, and likely to provide nothing more than a spectacular sight in the skies. And that's the story of the awesome collision on the moon today. This is Gary Kanan from our news center in Albuquerque. I didn't schedule a meteor shower as part of the evening entertainment at the reservation. But it should be quite a sight.
Well, this is a great meal, Professor.
That's a great stew. What's in it?
Oh, a lot of things. Chicken, corn, green peppers, chili, onions. Well, it's an old recipe around here.
Well, if nobody minds, I think I'll have some more. All for the cause of research, naturally.
I'm glad that's what you call it.
You know, I'd like to get some night shots of this area.
Well, if you don't mind me tagging along, I know a few great spots. But they're pretty far away.
That is a lizard.
Oh, sorry. Things like that scare me.
You get used to lizards here. They're quite common. That's why tribes in this area have so many legends about lizards.
Like, what, for instance?
Such as the story of Lizard and Coyote, for instance. In the days before there were men on Earth.
Sounds like it's going to be the Navajo version of Genesis.
Ignore him, Professor. I'd like to hear the story.
It'll have no effect on your grades.
I don't expect it to. I'd just like to hear it.
Well, one day, before man walked on Earth, Lizard and Coyote were having an argument about what shape man would take. Lizard won the argument. They finally agreed that man's hands would be shaped like lizards. 4 fingers and a thumb.
Hey, that's right.
Was that the end of the story?
Not quite. Coyote drove a hard bargain. He agreed that man's hands would be shaped like lizards rather than his paws. But only if man would be mortal and never again try to be like lizard.
You see quite a distance up here. Although we've got a lot more air pollution than we used to. That's Albuquerque over there. And that road leads to Santa Fe, northeast. And the river's over there.
Paul, where are we exactly?
I'm sorry. We're on the top of Sandia Crest. It's 10,678 feet up or down, depending on where you are and your point of view. Yeah, I'd like to come up here at night. It's one of my favorite places on Earth. It's always so peaceful, so quiet. Somehow above the rest of my life.
Right on schedule.
Paul, what's wrong? What is it? Paul, are you all right? What happened?
A meteorite. A lunar meteorite.
A meteorite?
We heard about it earlier on TV.
Yes, but here?
Oh, we're right in the area where they're due to fall. I guess we can consider ourselves lucky. What's the matter?
You've got a scratch or something on your forehead.
I don't feel anything.
Oh, no, don't touch it. Let me do that.
I must have bumped it when we hit the dirt.
Let me clean it up anyway. See, you were bleeding.
That's nothing. Hey, Kathy. Look at that. That'll make a great souvenir. My own personal moon rock.
Moon rock? Oh, wow.
Did I say something wrong?
No, but you just reminded me. I'm supposed to go into town tomorrow. There's a NASA exhibit at the university, and I'm supposed to cover it.
That's a great idea. We'll go to the exhibit, then we'll have some supper, then we'll go out afterwards. Just in case the moon rock hasn't cooled off, comfortable enough to travel now.
Have you got a first aid kit in that bag?
A few things. Why?
I'm still worried about that cut on your head. It could get infected.
Look, I don't live far from here. And I've got all kinds of antiseptic in my medicine cabinet at my place.
Your place?
My place.
Fine. Your place, then.
I gather nobody's home.
My mother's in Europe. She travels a lot. Now that the real Paul Carlson has stood up, what do you think?
I think you've spent a lot of your life being lonely.
When your parents are divorced, you get used to it. I'd like you to meet a friend of mine. Hey, his name is Ty.
Ty.
Short for Tyrannosaurus.
Sounds like something in a museum.
It is, usually. Ty looks a lot like a dinosaur. Or like the dragon the Indians call Avenue.
Thank you for introducing me to your friend.
Well, I hope he didn't frighten you.
Paul. It's us I'm really frightened about.
Kathy. Excuse me, I want to get a closer look at this moon rock.
Paul! Paul, what happened?
I guess I blacked out. I'm okay.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm fine. I just need some fresh air.
My voice been getting froggy, I've been smoking too damn much. Singing songs to the sun that's rising, rhyming words I cannot touch. Oh, I've been wandering in circles with just a guitar in my hand, playing one too many bar rooms and drinking more than I can stand. California lady, won't you bring your love to me? California lady, she's the one I want to see, my California lady.
Do a lot better off if we take you home. Like now.
Johnny's right, Paul. You're going home.
I'm hung out in Chicago with a California mind. Oh, lady love and Lord above, these city mountains aren't my kind. Oh, I've been wandering in circles with just a guitar in my hand, playing all them funky bar rooms and drinking more than I can stand. California lady, won't you bring your love to me? California lady, she's the one I want to see, my California lady, my California lady, my California lady.
I'm just not sure. Leaving him alone.
It's the best way. Paul's still learning a lot of things.
Such as?
Such as how to accept help from other people. He's used to doing things for himself. He's been a loner a long time. It's not easy to change.
Even so.
Tell you what. If Paul calls me during the night, I'll call you, come pick you up. How's that?
I'll buy that. And if Paul calls me first?
Yes.
the national news. Now turning to the news of the local Albuquerque area. 25 people were stranded this afternoon for over 4 hours on the Sandia cable lift. The lift was halted due to a severe thunder and lightning storm which swept through the Sandia range at approximately 2 o'clock this afternoon. No major injuries were reported, although 7 people did request hospitalization. Also stranded atop the crest were some 300 people who were vacationing.
Oh, go to hell, Sid. I told you what was going to happen when you came home again from that bowling alley drunk. I'm going to bed. And you can just sleep it off out there. Go to hell.
Who's there?
Boy, oh boy, can't you just feel that chemistry between Paul and Kathy?
Okay, yeah, Paul's a pretty boring dude, but you have to admit, he must be a Superman or something because he got domed by a meteor from space and walked away with only a scratch on his forehead. That's pretty amazing.
You know, what's amazing is that Kathy likes this guy. He is shockingly dull.
Hey man, I'm telling you, he took that meteor like a champ. He clearly is a Superman.
I guess. Track of the Moon Beast was directed by Richard Ashe, who was listed as Dick Ashe in the credits. This was the only film he directed. However, he did have a trio of credits as an assistant director. The most important of these was in 1970 when he worked as the second assistant director working under Frank Perry on the film Diary of a Mad Housewife. That film earned the lead actress, Carrie Snodgrass, a Best Actress Oscar nomination. Ashe's career lasted only about 3 or 4 years. By the time this film was released, he had already been out of working on films for a few years.
You know, I don't think the movie seems poorly directed. Maybe it's a little bland, and I guess that does make you think this movie was specifically made for TV.
Yeah, no real notes from me on the way that he directed this movie. However, maybe where the really not so great stuff is from our cast. Our king of charisma, Paul, is played by Chase Cordell. Now, Cordell was a bit player in movies and TV before and for a little while after this movie. Track of the Moon Beast is pretty much the highest profile role and the biggest role in anything he had ever really done.
Yeah, I mean, he was out there in the desert digging around and people were trying to scare him and he had no reaction to it. He didn't even seem all that interested in those people when they were trying to apologize to him for, I guess, scaring him?
Yeah, I friggin' love that first scene of this movie. If anything tells you that maybe you're in for a long, hard ride with this movie and really make you question whether or not you can really like the lead character, it's that opening scene. Not only is Paul not at all scared by the sounds the others are making, but he doesn't even really react or seemingly accepts their apology when they come out to reveal themselves. He barely even acts like Johnny Longbow is actually a friend of his.
That opening scene is so weird.
Yeah, it really is. But through that scene, we also meet our love interest for Paul, Kathy Nolan. Now, Kathy is played by Lee Drake. Drake has 4 credits. This was her first, but she mostly has small roles, but the most interesting movie on her entire filmography would come in 1985. In fact, it's the very next credit after this movie, The Return of the Living Dead. She's listed as the dispatcher in that, and I think we're pretty sure she's the one that the zombie asks to send more paramedics, but I could be wrong on that. Now, while I wouldn't necessarily say that Lee Drake does much in this except being trotted out and kind of acts a little bit like a bimbo and then instantly falls in love with this strip named Paul.
Don't forget she also doesn't like Paul's lizard pet.
No, she is not a fan of Komodo dragons. But what I was saying is, what is interesting is that Lee Drake does talk about this movie, maybe more than anyone else involved with this movie over the years. She talked about how this movie was so full of problems, she wasn't sure it was ever going to see the light of day after the movie wrapped. It wasn't until it was released on DVD in the early 2000s that she learned from her stepmom that it did get released.
She didn't even know about the Mystery Science Theater episode?
I guess not, but one person connected with the movie did, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the show. But now let's talk about the most interesting people in this movie. The first is Gregorio Sala.
Johnny Longbow!
That's right, Johnny Longbow. Johnny is by far the most interesting and engaging character in this entire movie. Every now and then, there's a movie that comes along that seems to want to couch itself in kind of like Native American lore. Later on in the 70s, there's the movie Manitou, which is kind of like The Exorcist, but based on Native American stuff. This movie precedes that by several years, but in this, you have Johnny Longbow, who lends context and will continue to lend context throughout this movie about what's going on and what's happening to Paul. He talks about a native concept around the origins of man, and I would love to know more about Sala because he's so easy to watch whenever he's on screen, and he does have a little bit of gravitas to him, and he's definitely more interesting than Paul and Kathy in this movie combined.
Plus, he seems to have a pretty bitchin' stew recipe.
Oh, he most definitely does. But as much of an earworm it is to hear Johnny Longbow's list of ingredients for his stew, it cannot hold a candle to
California Lady!
Ah, yes, California Lady. Perhaps one of the most remembered host segments on MST3K ever, at least for me, was their Behind the Music style documentary on the band that played California Lady. By the way, anyone remember Behind the Music? That shit from VH1 was fantastic every week. You remember that, Nurse?
What do you think I am, some sort of boomer?
Yeah, you young whippersnapper. Anyway, the song was performed by Frank Larrabee. Now, California Lady came from a 7-inch EP called Gypsy Song. That was released in 1973, and California Lady was one of the 6 songs on that EP. Larrabee wrote a few other songs here and there, but before this movie and before he released California Lady, he was part of a duo called Sigling and Larrabee. And they had a single album released in 1970. And while California Lady may be the song he will forever be remembered for because of this movie, that self-titled Sigling and Larrabee album featured a song called Philadelphia Girl.
Philadelphia Girl!
God, I hope that's what that song really is like.
Oh man, what if all their songs have the same music and the lyrics fit into it that way? That would be hilarious.
I mean, for all we know, it's the truth. But Frank Larrabee was convinced to appear in this movie. It just so happened that he and his band were staying at the same hotel that the cast and crew for this movie were staying at in the Albuquerque area. Basically realizing their opportunity to have a song by this band and have it be a scene in the movie in which Johnny Longbow, Paul, and Kathy can be doing a thing together, and Paul reveals that he's not feeling well and so on and so forth. They felt they needed to get this guy. They eventually convinced him to perform the song, and it was filmed there at the Days Inn everyone was staying at.
Did the Days Inn have a concert hall?
I mean, in 1972, I wouldn't be surprised if Days Inns across the country had some sort of theater or something.
Wait, seriously?
Only kind of, but then again, considering Days Inns were basically roadside motels, maybe it was possible that some had something that would provide, entertainment to long-haul truckers or people who were just passing through or something. Truck stops have all sorts of interesting things that you don't normally see at other hotels or motels, even on the side of the interstate, or even think might be at places like that.
It's true. I've spent a lot of time at truck stops.
I'm going to leave that one be, so let's get back to the movie.
Sweet. I want to try Johnny Longbow's recipe for stew while we watch the next portion of the movie.
Thanks, Kramer, for bringing the professor.
Hello, Mark. What happened here?
A killing. A messy one. The medical examiner's report being phoned in?
I'll make sure I'll have a copy on your desk when you get back, Captain.
Good. Let me have copies of the other reports, too. All of them.
Yes, sir.
Fine. Check in the house and see if you can lend a hand. Now I'll tell you exactly why I asked you here.
I was wondering. It sounded urgent.
It's because I need an opinion from you.
My field isn't medicine. You know that, Mac.
I know.
Well, what then?
One problem with being a cop is that eventually you think you've seen everything. Well, this morning I found out I was wrong. This is different. Which one is him? The woman had a weak heart, and what she saw when she opened the door apparently finished her. There's no report of any violence on her. But take a look at the man. What kind of thing would cut up someone like that?
Could have been a mountain lion, Mac.
No, Johnny. Not that easy. I want to show you something one of my men found at the back of the house. Whatever. Killed Harris must have tripped over the garden hose and grabbed at the side of the house for support. Take a break. I'll check things here.
You're right. That wasn't made by a mountain lion. That mark was made by a human hand.
Well, I would agree with you except for one thing. You tell me what kind of human makes a footprint like that. Now you get the picture, Geoff? When I got that radio call, I thought someone had made a real goof. But when I saw Harris, I had to believe it. Harris was killed by some kind of thing that was nearly 7 feet tall. Had hands with claws on the fingers. And walked on feet like I've never seen before. Now that's why I had to bring you here, Johnny. Now you're right, this is not some kind of medical problem. I don't know what kind of problem it is. You're an anthropologist, Johnny. I thought, well, just maybe, you might be able to help us with this.
Well, I can't tell you. I've seen a track like that before.
Where?
In a museum. A fossil track. Several million years old. Have your men made a plastic cast of the track? We might get a better answer from the paleontology department at the university. The department head, Dietz, he's a friend of mine.
Let's go, now. The casting should be ready.
Wake up. Wake up. I decided to make breakfast for us while you hit the shower. Paul!
I agree with Professor Salinas. Your casting here is that of the left hind foot.
Of some form of reptile, some very, very large lizard.
I still can't believe that there are lizards that big in New Mexico, or anywhere else for that matter.
Sorry, Captain McCabe, you're wrong about that. There is a lizard we call Varnus comodensis. There's some photos of him over in the paleontology lab, who grows to be all of 10 feet long. He's quite a fellow. The Indonesians call him the Komodo dragon.
Gee, is it possible that one of these lizards is here? Somehow.
I don't think so. And if there were one somehow on the loose, it wouldn't be what you're looking for. The Komodo dragon walks on 4 feet. This indicates a lizard that can walk upright. Some form of reptile closely related to the Tyrannosaurus rex.
Thanks, Johnny. But how in the hell am I going to tell the commissioner or anyone down at City Hall? A man was killed on the doorstep of his own home last night by some kind of dinosaur.
Feel today, Paul?
Oh, a lot better than yesterday.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, they're pretty good. But you should see Johnny work with the bow. Our scholarly anthropologist here was the conference archery champ in college. I've seen his trophies. How about a little demonstration for our captain?
All right. Come on, Johnny Longbow. I'd like to see you live up to your name.
Johnny made everything himself. Even the arrowheads. Everything is authentic Indian. Okay, Johnny. Now let's really impress the lady from New York.
Hold this.
Paul!
I think he overdid it by coming out here today. Better get him home, Kathy.
Oh, no. You're not talking me out of it this time. I'm staying. You need looking after. Did you take the aspirins?
Yes, Master.
There. That's better. Dark and restful. You should be able to sleep now. If you should need anything, I'll be right in the den, okay?
Okay.
Open it. Okay, then. I'll open it. Wait just a minute. I'll open it for two.
You open it for two.
Right.
All right, I'll see it. I'm in for two.
You're in for two. How about you, Earl?
Yeah, I'm going to stay for two.
Okay, how many cards? How many cards?
I'll take a pair.
A pair will never win this game. A pair will never win this game, friend.
I'm going to say same thing as he does. Same thing.
Okay. Two for you and two winning cards for the big winner of the night. Okay?
Paul. When I woke up and couldn't find you anywhere in the house, I got so worried. What are you doing out here?
It was so warm in my room. I couldn't get back to sleep.
But it must have been chilly out here last night. You could have caught cold. All you men are alike. Sometimes you act like such big babies. Come on. I'll make you some breakfast.
He was still alive when we found them. The man was pretty far gone in shock. But he did manage to say something about a lizard. A big lizard. A big lizard that walked like a man.
Seems to me I've heard that expression before.
Maybe. Something your friend Dietz said about a dinosaur?
The Tyrannosaurus. Well, now there have been discoveries of supposedly extinct creatures dating back to the dinosaur age. Ancient life forms that are still alive today.
Maybe there is a dinosaur still alive. Up in the hills. Something drove it out of the hills. Now it's on the loose.
Professor Salinas, those poor men murdered in the hills last night. Have the police found out who did it?
Only some theories. That's all so far. Were those the reason for all that laughter when I drove up?
They're the pictures Kathy took at the NASA exhibit. You should see the one of Bud looking at the girl in the tight jumpsuit. His eyes were popping out.
What happened in this shot?
Oh, this one. I don't really know. It's probably a light leak or a lab error. It's on the original transparency, too. I was going to check with the lab in town later.
How is he, by the way?
Paul? He seemed a little better when Janet and Bud called for me before, but he still had a headache. I'm worried about him. Those headaches he's been having.
He's been having those headaches since the day after that meteor shower. Didn't you tell me he hit his head in the ground that night? When he tried to shield you from that meteorite that exploded.
That's right. He got a cut on his head.
A cut?
More like a scratch. Just a little one.
It's possible Paul may have gotten more than a scratch. A light concussion, maybe.
Then you think...
But don't worry. I said it might be a light concussion. It's nothing really serious. I'll tell you what. I'll pick up Paul on my way. Take him to a hospital. St. Joseph's will be the best. They'll do a cranial x-ray, check him out. He'll be back to normal and back to you in no time at all. The lab that did this print. It's near the hospital. I'll have that light streak checked out. Save your trip? Hurry up, Slowpoke. I want to get you off my hands. Then, your lady can take over.
Johnny, you're one hell of a guy.
White man, speak with forked tongue.
Oh, quick, let me write that down.
Hurry up, will you? I got other things to do. What happened here? Where's Ty?
I don't know. He must have broken out the night before last. Something scared him. Maybe the meteor shower.
Is this the meteorite you found?
Small personal moon rock. Funny thing, I've looked through every text I have on mineralogy, and I can't find anything like it. Of course, I haven't run a series of tests on it.
You mind if I borrow your moon rock for a couple of days?
Go ahead. I was going to take it to the geology lab anyway. Maybe they can find the answer to it. I can't.
But right now, we're going to take you over to St. Joe's. Maybe they can find an answer to what's been bugging you.
That's it. You can get dressed now.
I finished with your friend. It'll take about 20 minutes or so to process the plates. Dr. Sutton's expecting you. He left word you to wait in his office.
Thanks. How do you feel?
Not bad.
Good. While you're waiting, I might as well do an errand near here. I'll be back in a little while.
No sweat.
Then it's not just some kind of error in printing, Mr. Hamill.
Definitely not. I remember looking at the originals on that roll myself. What you see is what happened. I can't explain it, but it's not our fault or the fault of the film.
Well, have you ever seen anything like that before?
Never. I've been in this business for years.
I'm Dr. Sutton. Would you come this way, please? I've looked at your x-rays.
And?
We don't usually discuss them with patients, but this isn't a usual case, Mr. Carlson. This is the normal situation, just to give you an idea. And this is the one we took of you.
What does it mean? What's happened to me?
You've been hit by a small particle of matter of some kind. Not enough to cause any pain because of the high speed, but it is there.
Then something's inside my head?
Yes. It's not uncommon. There have been cases where servicemen have survived with small particles of shrapnel embedded in their brain.
This wasn't shrapnel, Doctor.
So I understood. A meteorite, you said?
What happens now?
Now? Now we're going to keep you here for a few more days for observation. We're going to take more x-rays. If that area doesn't clear up, we're going to do something about it, surgically.
I made these photos several years ago when I was doing research for my doctorate. They just might have a connection to your killer lizard.
Well, at this point, I'd settle for anything in the way of a lead. Well, let's see him.
This is the first scene in the deer hide painting I was shown. Not many people have seen it. It's something like 400 years old.
What's happening to the Indian in the painting?
It's the beginning of the story. He's being struck by a light that comes down from the sky.
Well, what happened to him?
See for yourself. Whatever struck him from the sky changed him completely from human form. He became a demon lizard monster. Arrows had no effect on him.
Well, how'd they get rid of this demon lizard?
They didn't, but it died anyway. It was consumed by fire. But where the flames came from, nobody knows. That's a mystery. And it's still a mystery after 400 years. I know what you're thinking. It's only an Indian legend, part of our tribal culture. I know, it's fantastic, but it's the one thing that ties in with what the fisherman said. He said the camp was attacked by a lizard that walked like a man. Now, I want your help, Mac.
Well, we've got the place to ourselves. I had them close up early on my authority, and I hope this proves something. You'll know in a minute. I never thought I'd see the day when I tried to solve a case with Indian superstition.
We are just about to find out. It should be somewhere just about here.
What was that?
I don't really know. My guess is that there's some unusual element in this fragment that synchronizes with that larger mass over there. And it produces some kind of energy reaction.
You mean this energy, or whatever it is, it'll turn a human into a monster? Just like in those werewolf tales? When there's a full moon in Transylvania? Johnny, I've known you for a long time. You gotta be kidding.
I wish I was kidding, Mac. I'm not. Now, there is an answer. But I think I know what it is. And it makes me sick to think about it. If what you say is true, the X-rays, the way the meteorite reacted, and your Indian legend, then there's something I've got to know for my own peace of mind.
Maybe rough, boy.
He's right, Paul. Nobody knows what may happen. Let's find out. How much time do I have?
Be sundown in half an hour. The moon will be up an hour or so after that.
Before anything happens, I want to talk to Kathy. I'm sure that can be arranged. She's at the reservation. I'll phone her now.
You better give her some idea of what he might have to go through, just to prepare her.
I'll try. Kathy, I have to talk to you before I go in there. We've had to move Paul to another room. Isn't there?
Why is he in there? Why are these policemen here?
We're not sure what may happen to Paul after the moonrise. In fact, moving him here was his idea.
But surely...
Kathy, see, this is a hospital. We can't afford to take any chances. The moon is a strong effect on the earth. Look what it can do to the tides. In Paul's case, it may trigger a whole set of changes, a temporary mutation.
I want to see him. Now. Please.
Nearly sundown now. She shouldn't be in there much longer. All right, I'll get her. Kathy? Kathy?
Thanks, Johnny.
Can I take you home?
No, thank you anyway.
No trouble, miss. One of my men can take you home.
Thank you, Captain. I'll be all right. I'd like to stay here at the hospital.
The moon is up now. I hope you're right. I don't. I hope I'm wrong. Well, we'll know in a few minutes. Something's happening.
All right, Nurse, how's that stew coming along?
Smells pretty yummy over here. You certainly can do an awful lot with chicken, corn, green peppers, chili, onions.
That you can, Nurse. That you can. All right, I think we need to talk a little more seriously about the script of Track of the Moonbeast. This is a peculiar script. There are several scenes, particularly early on in this movie, that feel really stilted and kind of exposition heavy. When we first meet our main characters, there are very unnatural ways that these characters and people talk about each other and to each other. Johnny Longbow talks to Paul about things that Paul did in the past, but he's saying it sort of to inform the audience and the other two characters who are there in earshot at the time, but it sounds really clunky because he's also talking to Paul about things that Paul knows he did in the past. It's very clunky and very bizarre.
It's like that time you switched from wanting to write screenplays to writing a blog and then made this show.
That's right, Nurse. It's also like the time that I started this show with a completely different idea for your character and then did an overhaul in season 2.
It's like I always say, figments of your imagination and inner voices inside your head should have other talents. Like bird calls.
Well, that's a talent? Bird calls? See, audience, people don't really talk like that when they know each other or even when they meet someone for the first time. It does have a feeling of something else that I have a great deal of experience with in terms of being a lifelong fan of. Comic books. You see, before, say, maybe the mid-70s or 80s, comic books were often written in a very simplistic style for the main audience of the time, children. Sure, comics could still lace in more complicated or mature themes for the older kids or young adults also reading the books. However, when most of the target audience are pre-teen, you need to figure out a way to provide exposition about characters, what their motivations are, what their relationships to each other are, and what their general personalities reveal about themselves. Another reason why you have to do this in a very specific way is that any individual comic might be someone's first for that series, so it requires backtracking certain things with characters, flat out telling people what relationships the characters have, and so on and so forth. Now, there are two ways to do this in comics, with caption boxes used with flashbacks or with direct dialogue between characters. And a lot of comics later adopted kind of like a where we are at kind of first page, where it kind of catches people up in more like a prose style and then moves into picking up the action at that point. Now, if this was a comic book, then the dialogue between Johnny Longbow, Paul, Bud, and Janet would be kind of normal. Even the way they're positioned with no additional business happening with the characters. The business being what people do when they're on screen. You walk over, you get on screen, and then you do something with your hands. That's called business. It's what I'm doing right now. This is business. But they are in a lineup and talking to each other in a master shot. Even when Kathy comes over, she joins the lineup, and then the dialogue happens the exact same way as we saw. That scene even ends with Kathy and Paul giving exposition about Johnny Longbow's name in comparison to the name that she knows him as. Johnny Longbow is his native name, and she knows him as Professor Salinas, which is his English name. It's something that you might think she would know if she's been working with Johnny to do this story, in particular because it is about his native traditions. But it does play out kind of like a comic book. Now, there might be a reason for this. The movie is co-written by writing partners William Finger and Charles Sinclair. Finger and Sinclair worked on TV shows like Batman, 77 Sunset Strip, and co-wrote the film The Green Slime, which we briefly touched upon earlier this season when I mentioned Luciana Paluzzi during our episode on Gunmen of Ave Maria. Now, it's funny that Sinclair completely forgot he wrote this movie until his son called him to tell him that Mystery Science Theater 3000 was featuring the movie in 1999. That alone is fascinating because it's not really like Sinclair had a huge career. This was the final movie he was credited for writing. He appeared as a caveman in the Flintstones movie in 1994. I guess he sometimes did stuff in front of the camera too, but he wasn't really even in the business at the time this movie finally got released. But no, the key figure here is Sinclair's writing partner, William Finger. If you are a comic book fan, then you know him as Bill Finger, and he's one of the most important Golden Age comic book creators of them all, and one of the more sad stories in the business. Finger was born in Denver in 1914. Like many comic book writers in the early days of the Golden Age brought on by Siegel and Schuster's Superman, Finger was born to a Jewish family. Later in life, the Fingers moved to the Bronx, but when the Great Depression hit, Bill's father was forced to close his tailor shop. But in 1938, Bill Finger was an aspiring writer, but was holding a normal part-time job as a shoe salesman. He met Bob Kane at a party. The two had attended the same high school, but in two different classes. But Kane had started up a studio and invited Finger to join it. Kane would end up giving Finger a job ghostwriting two comic strips, one called Rusty and the other called Clip Carson. 1938 was the same year Superman premiered in National Comics, later known as DC Comics. Bob Kane, in the scramble that ensued for writers and artists to sell the next great superhero, conceived the idea of the Batman. He did some drawings and shared them with Bill Finger. Kane's original idea for the Batman looked a little bit more like a trapeze artist. He had red tights, a domino mask, not a cape, but wings that were more stiff, and then no gloves or gauntlets or anything on his hands. Now, Finger made the suggestion that the character should wear a cowl instead of the Mystery Man-style domino mask. And then he put him in a cape instead of the wings and gave him gloves to wear. To give him more of what would eventually become his Dark Knight style, Finger also suggested that he get rid of the red tights and settle for something darker in tone. Finger also conceived of the idea of the alter ego being Bruce Wayne. Now, Bob Kane never denied that Finger was a major contributing force in the creation of Batman. He even credits Finger for giving Batman the detective and scientist angle that he's so well known for throughout the decades. Finger also helped create Robin and then the Joker, which was really, the Joker was really co-created by Finger and Jerry Robinson, but Kane claimed that he was really the co-creator with Finger. History suggested otherwise throughout the years. Now, Finger was also involved in the creation of the Penguin, the Riddler, Scarecrow, Two-Face, and Calendar Man. All these villains were introduced in the early days of Detective Comics and the Batman title. Now, Batman and all those characters I just mentioned weren't the only characters Finger worked on. Just after Batman's debut, Finger was brought in to work with artist Martin Nodell on the creation of another very popular DC Comics character, the Green Lantern. Now, Nodell had basically already conceived of the character, and Finger was there more to write the scripts of the early stories and flesh out some of the character stuff. Now, eventually, Finger left Kane's studio and became a direct employee of DC Comics. There, he was able to work on Superman, and while writing the Superboy title, he created another long-lasting DC Comics character, Lana Lang. Now, in the 50s, coming back to the Batman book, he introduced more characters like Clayface, Batmite, the original Batgirl, Betty Kane, and Ace the Bat-Hound. There were lots of comics and companies that Finger would end up working for in his roughly 25-year career in comics. But here's where things start to get a little unfortunate. In the golden age of comics and the earlier years of the Silver Age, bylines weren't all that common in comics. Now, while I know some writers were more than okay with this because they wanted to be thought of as serious writers, and if they were known as comic book writers, it might make it a little bit more difficult for them to secure serious and continual work as a published writer. Stan Lee changed his name to Stan Lee so that he could pursue his regular writing career, if he wanted to, with his birth name. However, there never were much in the industry in terms of standards for giving credit to creators. Some of this was a trade-off for writers and artists to have job security. The publishers owned most characters and work, but the writers and artists had steady work. And I can see how that might be incredibly important early on during the end of the Depression. But Bob Kane, since he had his own studio, had some negotiation power to make sure Batman would have a byline, for himself at least. But this severely screwed over Bill Finger. Kane's negotiation with National Comics was to sign away ownership of Batman in exchange for a sole byline in the comics that gave Kane sole creatorship over the character. Now, like I said, Kane would state that Bill Finger was an important and key person in Batman's creation, but Kane would never really give Finger published credit. Kane was never shy to be the public face as the creator of Batman. I would say that he took a page, again, from Stan Lee's book of being the public face of an empire, and he was very keen to always want people to be aware of what he claimed he created, which was that he created Batman on his very own. He would go on to say in the late 80s, as Tim Burton's Batman movie was taking the world by storm, that he would lament to his wife if there was any way for him to go back in time before Bill died, he'd give him co-credit for Batman. But by not doing so, it very likely severely hurt Finger's ability to either use that byline as a way to continue to secure work, or at least better paying work. Now, Kane would say that he would always tell Finger how important he was and so forth, but that always seemed like it was either in private or a way for Kane to sound better in public that he did express his appreciation for Finger and what have you. But still, Kane, for a big chunk of Batman's history, was credited as the sole creator. Now, Finger did get credit for some of the characters he created, but none on the level of Batman. It wouldn't be until 2015 before DC agreed to begin giving Finger co-credit for Batman's creation in comics and in other media. And it was 2016's Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice that showed Bill Finger's name in the credits for the first time as the co-creator of the Caped Crusader. But it was too little too late in my humble opinion. Finger was married twice, but he was no longer married when he died in early 1974. It was very likely that he had died from complications from 3 heart attacks that he had suffered in a 15-year period. He was found dead by Charles Sinclair. It was believed that Finger suffered from poverty, and aside from his son, Fred, didn't really have much else in terms of family. For a long time, Sinclair thought that Finger was buried in an unmarked potter's grave, but Fred had actually collected his father's remains, cremated him, and spread his ashes in the shape of a bat on a beach in Oregon. Fred's lone daughter, Athena, born after William Finger's death, would herself lose her father to AIDS as a teenager. Athena and her son are the only living heirs to Bill Finger. She was the one who ultimately restored the legacy of her grandfather that she had never met and helped Bill get the credit he so long deserved for Batman. Now, it's Bill Finger's name on this film that makes me appreciate this movie a little bit more than I probably should as a, movie guy person. This was likely the last thing he ever did as a writer. He didn't see it get released, and maybe that's for the best. Still, his name is an important one in the history of a different medium, sure, but an important one nonetheless. Now, if you are interested in learning more about Bill Finger and the fight to restore his legacy as co-creator of Batman, there is a wonderful documentary on Hulu called Batman and Bill that I highly recommend.
All right, Geoff, the stew's finished. Let's give her a shot.
Oh, okay. Let's see what we got here. That is a great stew. What were those ingredients again?
Chicken, corn, green peppers, chili, onions. It's an old recipe from Johnny Longbow.
Well, I'm going to finish up this yummy stew and get back to the thrilling conclusion of Track of the Moon Beast.
Then it's true. It was me. I killed all those people.
It wasn't your fault, son. They won't convict you. They won't even blame you once the people know the facts.
We'll soon have you back to normal, Paul. Do I need these now?
No. Dr. Sutton's been in touch with NASA about your case. They're sending one of their top lunar scientists and one of the finest brain surgeons in the country. See, that particle of meteor in the front part of your brain, it's causing the problem. When it's removed, you won't have a thing to worry about. You can go back to leading your normal life.
I'd like to see Kathy. Please.
Would you fasten your seatbelts, please? We'll be landing shortly.
When are we due in Albuquerque?
In about 20 minutes. The captain got a message a few minutes ago. You and Dr. Lawrence will be met at the airport.
Thank you. May we get off first, please? We just have some hand luggage.
That's also been arranged. You and Dr. Rizzo are to be given every cooperation.
I must admit I was pretty startled last night when I got the call.
So was I. I've never come up against a case anything like it. And I've had a few unusual ones, I must say.
We've been worried at NASA all through the Apollo program about the possibility that something could cause a mutated life form. Nothing ever happened.
Until now.
Oh, Paul. This is Dr. Rizzo.
How are you, Paul? I'm going to be operating on you in just a little while.
Glad to see you. What happens now?
We're going to make another set of x-rays just to check on the particle. The new set will give us an exact pinpointing of the spot in the left frontal lobe where it is.
I thought you should see these right away, Doctor.
I think we should look at these inside.
What's the matter?
I don't know, but I'll try to find out.
If you look at the difference in the affected areas, you'll notice considerable change, Doctor. There's been a definite growth.
From the look of it, I'd say the particle in that young man's brain has disintegrated, and energy factors are spreading through his entire system. No question about it.
Isn't there any way of, well, neutralizing the effect, Doctor? That's your field, Dr. Lawrence. Isn't there something that can be done?
We're dealing with a brand new unstable element here, one we've never seen before. We don't know its characteristics, atomic structure, how it reacts. There's a chance. There's always a chance. Eventually, by doing research on the meteorite fragments you showed me, well, we might learn how to cure your friend.
At the time, you're saying, by then it could be too late.
I can't give you the timing exactly, but more or less what's going to happen is that the very presence of the moon itself, a moon rock of gigantic size, if you will have a recurring effect on your friend's mutation every night, just as the energy emitted by that particle in his brain was triggered by the small moon rock at our exhibit here. Eventually, the diffusion throughout his body will be complete. And at that point, the situation will be atomically unstable.
Then, the energy is released all at once. A form of explosion.
Exactly. And when it happens, your young friend will be consumed by it.
I've got to talk to you now. Let's go. The demon in the tribal painting. Self-consumed. One Indian mystery solved.
Oh, Paul, why couldn't there be time for us?
There isn't. And that's why I'm going away. Now, if I'm gonna die, I want to die looking like a man, not like a monster.
Paul, don't.
I need a few minutes. I've got to get away from here.
Get away where?
I don't know. But I can't stand being locked up here again.
Will I see you again?
I don't know. I want you to go back to Dr. Sutton's office. And if anybody asks where I am, I want you to tell them I'm on the roof. That'll keep him busy enough for a few minutes. Long enough for me.
I won't do it.
Kathy. Please. Do it for my sake. Do it because we love each other.
Oh, Paul. Why did this have to happen to you?
It did happen. That's all I know.
dunce I've ever seen. Does that kid think he can get away?
He's not trying to get away. You don't understand. You just don't.
A search has begun to locate a young
Yes, sir.
male patient.
What can I do for you?
From a serious headache.
I'd like
Who
a
escaped a short
12-gauge
time ago
shotgun
from a special
and some shells.
observation room at
Well, we
St.
have some very nice models just came in. Very nice guns. I'll be glad to show.
Joseph's and by Captain Stuart McCabe, authority of the city's police commissioner. Here's a description of the man being sought, whose name is Paul G. Carlson. He's 24 years old, Caucasian, about 6 feet tall, weighing 160. Brown hair,
Here's a nice one.
blue eyes, regular features. Carlson was last seen in the vicinity of St. Joseph Hospital. He's believed dressed in tan slacks and a blue sweater.
We got a report on him. The owner of a gun shop says he tried to buy a shotgun, but left without it. I don't think he wants it as a weapon. He wants to kill himself. Why, Miss Nolan?
Because we overheard what Dr. Lawrence said in the other office. That's why.
You might be wrong, Mac. He's on a motorcycle. If he wanted to kill himself...
No. Crashes don't always kill people. He knows that. Now, he tried to find some way that was fast and foolproof. If only we had some kind of lead on him. Anything.
Yeah, I'd like to come up here at night. It's one of my favorite places on earth. It's always so peaceful, so quiet.
I can't stand this waiting around. I think it would be better if I went back to the reservation, don't you?
I guess so. Well, how will you get back?
I borrowed Bud's car.
I'll phone you if we hear anything.
They found the motorcycle.
Where?
Up in State Road 44. He took a spill. The bike is a wreck. But he'd probably walk away all right. They couldn't find him anywhere around the area.
That road leads up to Sandia Crest. Of course, that's gotta be it. Over the years, I got to know Paul pretty well. The one place he went to when he was troubled, the one place where he felt free, was Sandia Crest.
gunplay. Unless it's absolutely necessary.
I thought you... I know what you intend to do, but you mustn't. Please, you can't.
Kathy, I don't know how you found me, but you've got to leave now.
No, Paul. I want to be with you.
You can't stay. The sun's going down. It'll be night soon. If I don't reach the crest before the moon comes up, then you can't stay. Then it'll be too late for the both of us.
Checking the area. And you stay put. We'll check down the hill a little further. If anything happens, call me fast. Yes, sir.
My foot is caught. Help me. Paul, help me. Please. Please.
2 more men dead.
Oh, God.
It's too late to help Paul. Not now. It's got to be stopped before there's any more killing. Are you going to try and stop it with a bow and arrow? Not with just any arrow, Mac. I'm going to use this.
That looks like a piece of meteor Paul had.
It is. I've fashioned an arrowhead out of it.
What are you going to do? Johnny, tell me!
We're fighting something we barely understand, Kathy. The changes that a particle of matter from outer space is made in a human being. That's why I'm doing this. If a particle can generate all that energy, a larger piece from the same element might speed up the energy processes.
Dr. Lawrence, Paul and I heard you in the hospital. You said Paul would become atomically unstable, that he would...
It was always inevitable. This way it may happen a little sooner, that's all.
Johnny, you can't do it. He's your friend, Paul.
Paul is not Paul anymore. You've seen that. Kathy, he's not as you and I know him. Paul is gone. What you see in his place is nothing we know. Nothing human.
No!
That poor kid. He's had a rough time.
Sadly, things don't quite work out for Kathy and Paul. Johnny Longbow shows how he earned his name by hitting Paul with an arrow that ultimately kills him and puts the moon beast in the fucking ground.
You know, it sure was good of that doctor to share Paul's x-rays with him.
You know, that's one of the charmingly kind of dumb things about this movie. The doctor comes in and says that he looks at Paul's x-rays, but they don't normally discuss the results with the patients. Again, dumb, but something I'm more than happy to brush off in this movie.
How about that one scientist showing a picture of the Tyrannosaurus Rex? That picture of the supposedly apex predator of all time was pretty cute. And I like that Paul was able to so easily operate, for the most part, after being hit in the head by a meteor from space. And I like that the piece of moon rock that hit him looked like crumpled up aluminum foil. I like that the sets and Kathy's clothes are super groovy. And I like that this is sort of like a werewolf movie with monsters and moons and whatever. California Lady slaps. Maybe this was a low-budget film, but I liked the idea. I can also see why Mystery Science Theater 3000 did the episode for this movie. But I really would like to see that non-TV cut of this movie. I bet I'd like it even more. I gotta give this movie a perfect 5 poops out of 5.
You know, how many times have I said this movie is charming but stupid? At least I think I've driven that point home in many different ways throughout this episode. Sure, Paul and Kathy have such little chemistry, it's like negative chemistry. But man, Johnny Longbow, he's the main reason to watch this movie.
Yeah, can you imagine how awesome it would be to have him as your professor?
Oh yeah, I love his little theme song.
Yeah, it's peppy as hell.
Maybe it's that I'm a little blurry-eyed over Bill Finger's involvement here, but I do like this movie. I don't really have any good reasons for why I like this movie, but I just do. I think it's a nostalgia thing.
I get it. I wish the movie was a little clearer, like, where's Severin or Vinegar Syndrome at to clean this thing up and maybe find that R-rated version? The monster was kind of cool looking.
Yes, now that is something that some critics do give some good reviews on. The monster makeup was created by, and the monster himself was played mostly by makeup effects guy Joe Blasco. The makeup would take several hours to apply, and in the scene in the hospital when Paul transforms, that's the only time that Chase Cordell actually played the creature so that the crossfade would be right. But Blasco was pretty young when he did the creature effects for this movie. But in 1973, after this film was made, but before it was released, he set up his own makeup effects school. And he worked on a lot of TV shows as the makeup guy. But he also did makeup for films like Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS, and Cronenberg's Shivers and Rabid. He's credited as inventing the air bladder effect, which allowed for movies and TV shows to show skin blistering and bubbling. Although the technique was popularized by the likes of Dick Smith for The Exorcist and Rick Baker for An American Werewolf in London and The Howling. Now, Blasco would become the personal makeup artist for several big names. This included Orson Welles, Olivia Newton-John, and Bette Midler. In 1983, he started his own cosmetic company called, appropriately, Joe Blasco Cosmetics.
Who would have thought he'd call it that?
Well, you know, I don't have much more to say. What about you?
Nothing here, Geoff.
Oh, you're a moon beast.
Looks like it.
So, you gonna try to kill me?
Nah, just gonna hang out over here and be a moon beast.
Cool.
Cool. Do I look like a T-Rex?
Yeah.
I was hoping for a T-Rex look.
Yeah, it's just kind of a normal lizard head.
Ah, bummer.
Okay, well, yeah.
I guess I'll go find some flies and, I don't know, put them in my stew.
Yeah, you do that.
That's a great stew. What's in it?
Oh, a lot of things. Chicken, corn, green peppers, chili, onions. Well, it's an old recipe around here.